Hello and welcome to New Junction. Right, so as you can see, we're carrying straight on with the progress. So while I continue off camera for the most part to cover the canopies in the acrylic top, I'm going to work on some of the scenery to try and bring a bit more life to the scene. Now as you can see, it's quite a grey, desolate area currently. There's not really much life to it. Some of the bushes on the side here are pretty much it. And then of course we go over to the pilot sidings, which I've done along with the sleeping workmen, and you can see the grasses and bushes really bring that area to life and I suppose differentiate from the ballast of the main line. But that's yet to be achieved in the station. That's what I'm hopefully going to be doing in this episode, is focusing mainly on this bit around the fence, just to try and bring a green corridor to the station and maybe add some bits to the bases of these arches. Right, let's get on. Here goes. Right, so the middle arch is out. All the trains have now left the station, which only means one thing: we're getting on with some scenics. So for the bit of ballast just behind the fence as we're looking at it, I want to just slightly darken it off with some paint like I did my track. So I've got all the bits for that out. As you can see, I've got some Woodland Scenics Earth Undercoat, which is C1229. It's actually the same brown that I used on my baseboards. So I'm only just darkening off very lightly. I'm going to mix that in with some water, probably something like 1 to 3 ml of paint with 10 ml of water. And then I'm going to use an Oxford die-cast tub, upturned, mix it all in, and then lightly paintbrush it on with a big brush. And that's going to form the base to all my ground scatter next to the fence. Hopefully it's a good start. So let's get on with that now. So here we are with the Oxford die-cast tub. I've drawn up just over 1 ml of paint. So as you can see with the air bubble, probably 1.5 mils in there. That's going to go straight in the tub like so. And then drawing up from the water, I want to dilute this down now, remembering this is just a base coat, so nothing permanent. Got 5 ml of water here. I said the first time I used it, it doesn't look very pleasant, this colour. It's very fecal. But it should be a good undercover. So there we go, that's 10 ml of water to probably 1.5 ml of paint. Right, the next thing is just to stir that in without trying to splash it everywhere. And then that gives me a very soily colour. And then what I'm going to do is dab this on close to the fence and brush away from the fence. And as the paint runs out, the colour should also fade out as well. And don't forget, because it's been watered down, it will dry lighter. So there's no need to worry if you get it wrong. So here we are in position. I'm just going to dab my large brush into the liquid mix and then start off close to the fence. Just let it drip on and pull out away from the fence. As you can see, it's very lightly just coating the ballast. You can see on your screen it's just looking like it's getting darker, but that's exactly what we want. I'm going to continue this now and just paint in a bit more of this, and you'll join me when I'm finished. So as you can see, obviously the ballast is now dark, but that's because it's wet, but it will just leave an ever so slight brown tinge to the ballast, which is exactly what I wanted. I want to differentiate between the main line, which has been ballasted more often, and then the siding, which is long forgotten from days gone by. Right, the next phase, I want to dab on a bit of glue, especially close to the fence, probably come out maybe half an inch to an inch further round, and I'm going to dab on a mix of fine turfs. So I've got some woodland scenics green grass and the earth, and I'm also going to be mixing in some sieved soil just to sort of darken that off again and add a bit of texture. So here goes with that one. So here we are with another Oxford die-cast tub. So the first ingredient into it is my sieved fine soil. So that's going to go nicely in there. That forms the general base. And I'm going to add to that some of the earth and the green grass, just to bulk it out a bit. I find the soil just adds that little tiny bit of coarseness that the fine turfs don't offer. Now the green grass turf is very fluorescent, however it does accent the soil very well. So once I've mixed this in momentarily with the back end of a small brush, you can see the green almost disappears in that, but it just gives the ever so slight faint tinge, which is what we want, just to indicate there is a bit of life, and it also helps make your soil look ever so slightly damp in the seed, just because it's got that green look to it. Right, so the next stage, with another Oxford die-cast tub, I'm just going to dab a bit of glue on next to the fence with a brush. So I need another brush, and I'll be going against the fence and then literally pouring this on at random just to see how it looks. And again, that's the undercoat to some bushes. Right, so first things first, I need to find myself a brush. I don't think I've got one, so I will shout down the loft hatch and see if I can be passed one. Could I have a brush, please? I've not got one up here.
Yeah, Richard. Yeah, keep it down a bit, will you?
Sorry, is my saxophone-based music annoying you? Right, so my handy assistant has passed me a brush. So what we're going to do at first, if I move the camera ever so slightly, is dab it in nicely. And all we're going to do is lightly dab against the fence and do the same again, but only coming out an inch or so. Not being too aggressive with it, because I might pull up the ballast because it's still a bit wet. And we want the shapes to be random, so it doesn't have to be equal at all. If bits get missed with the glue, that's fine. Right, so I'm going to continue now with the gluing, and then I'll come back to you when I'm ready for scattering. So you'll have to believe me when I say there's glue along this edge. So all I'm going to do is take my scatter mix and just lightly do just that from a height, probably 6 inches off the baseboard, and just scatter it and let it drop as naturally as it wants to, close to the fence. All we want is a nice thin layer, and then once it's dried, the bits that haven't stuck down we'll just hoover up, and it should give it a nice natural positioning. So as you can see, trying to get it as equally layered as possible. as we go around. So you can already see it's starting to blend in. I'm trying to be thicker towards the fence line. But as you can see, that's doing just nicely. Don't worry about excess. Once it's dry, like I say, it will just hoover up. And then it wants to be as random as possible. And then away we go. So what I'm going to do is let this dry and then get on with the next phase. So while that is drying, you can just see that that's made a nice ground base cover for the impending bushes, which I'm now about to stick to the layout. So all in all, I'm really pleased with that. It just sort of layers it up and brings another dimension to this scene, and hopefully adds a bit of life. Right, now time for the seafoam bushes. Now this next bit is probably one of my favourite bits to modelling. It's really messy, and I just really love the process. You can be really creative, but as you can imagine, doing some seafoam bushes, which we're going to be using some layering spray with, you want to get as much track as possible covered over. In this instance, I'm using toilet roll. I find it's more easily disposable than kitchen roll, but all the points and the track work nearby, particularly the points, I'm just covering over, as you can see. Ooh. Just so any layering spray doesn't ruin it. And away we go. So just like that, knocking everything over. I believe we're about ready. Right, let's get on. Now the process of making seafoam bushes is extremely simple. You quite literally grab your box of seafoam, as you can see here, I've got mine. You pull out a piece that looks usable. Now on this particular piece I would trim off the giant stalk and just use the actual bush part. Trim that off with some scissors and then dab it in some glue and stick it against the fence periodically. That's what we're going to do now. So just to show you a nice example before I get on, pull out a bit. Ooh. Bit of behind the scenes for you. I've just opened this seafoam box and it had the biggest spider ever inside it, so nervously roots through the box. So here's a nice bit I've pulled off, and as you can see it's got a nice flat edge, and this will go nicely against the fence. So what I'll do is I'll trim the bottom down a bit because I don't want it to be too overpowering, and I'm going to keep the natural colours of the foam in, and then away we go. So I'm going to show you that a bit more close up so you can see what I mean. So my camera has a notoriously difficult time of focusing on the seafoam, but as you can see that fits just nicely there, and there'll probably be something else in front of it, so it sort of naturally goes down towards the front there. What I'm going to do now is start lining that up against the fence, and hopefully we'll build up a nice picture, a nice bit of shrubbery. And there we are. As you can see, it's now lined the fence pretty much the whole way, and I think it looks fairly good like that. Now you could leave it as is, but I've found that if you then take some hairspray or some layering spray and go over it again, you can use something like knock leaves or some more of the fine turfs. It just helps blend in any of the gaps and thickens up any thin areas. So that's what we're going to do now. Right, so for the next phase I've got some WWS static grass layering spray. Now obviously I'm not using that for static grass, I'm just going to spray it over the top and then go over it with some of the fine turfs that's in this tub from earlier. That's a good base. Then I can fill it in with, I've got a tub of knock leaves, and there's a mix of what I'd call medium green and light green in there, and they form the general top. Also, looking down on the bushes, some of the gaps are quite thin, especially underneath. So what I'm going to be doing is taking a nice mix of some coarse turfs by Woodland Scenics. I've got the medium green and light green, and I'll mix those together, and then again they'll be slotted underneath the bushes just to sort of pad it out and then generally add to the scene. A good way to sort of get these colours to blend in, particularly with the actual seafoam tops, is to use some of the fine turf. Now that really helps. So if any colours aren't really blending, just take a pinch of this stuff and just sprinkle it over the top, and it really helps. Right, let's get on. So a top tip when using the layering spray, obviously you're going to spray over the top here. You also want to spray to the front as well, because that's where the leaves would be. So it would look a touch unnatural if you only had leaves on the top. You also want it on the front side, particularly for the scene. So I've got a trusty deflector just to sort of help protect the station a bit more. Shake this up and wish me luck. So from a height, maybe 6 to 8 inches again, just going to spray the top nice and gently. And then from the front, it goes a lovely sort of hazy white. And that's in place. So the first thing, get some of the knock leaves, nice big pinch, and again from a height, sprinkle them over the top, and they just start to help pad out the seafoam. So all those gaps in amongst it, and it just lends itself. I add the lighter green leaves purely to sort of enhance the darker green ones. So I think the darker green on their own can be a touch lost. I want to actually know they're there. And again, I'm just trying to make sure that the fronts get some of these leaves as well. I don't want to go too heavy. I think less is more in this case. And then once you're done, deflector in place, and then from a bit more of a height, if there's any areas that need a few more leaves, I will just place a few on. I do want the natural colours of the seafoam to still be visible, and then just to help that along a bit, I'm taking ever so slight dabbing of the fine turf, and again this just helps blend it in, pads down the colour a bit, fades it down ever so slightly, and hopefully ends it looking a bit more realistic. And it's as simple as that. And all these extra layers of stuff just help fill out the gaps, and of course if any of it falls straight through, it just adds more realism to it. And that's pretty much it. So I'm going to go and finish up the rest of the hedgerow there, and then show you the results. So this is proving extremely difficult to focus on, so I'll try and be quick with this little clip. I'm actually currently taking the coarse turf by Woodland Scenics, and all I'm doing is pushing it into the underside of all the seafoam just to fill in the gap and pad it out. This makes it look like the seafoam's coming out of bushwork, and rather than looking a bit unplaced. So the more of this you can add, the better, and I'm literally pushing it down and pushing it into the gaps. Right, time to show you from a better angle. There we go. Hopefully that's a better angle for you. So all this hedgerow now is drying, and I think you'll agree it does bring to life the edge of the railway. It gives it that abandoned look, an unkept look, which I'm going for. I want to try and, as I said in the last video, keep up the appearance that the tracks once went to this side of this platform in time gone by, and I'm going to try and make this look as disused as possible and unkept as possible, whereas the main line obviously is looked after, and therefore there is a visual difference. So hopefully we're getting there. Right, I'm going to leave that there for now. I'm sure this is a long enough video. Thank you as ever for watching. I'm going to leave you with a few running shots now, and hopefully I'll have more on the canopy done next time. So thank you as ever for watching, and I'll see you later. Take care, guys.